As Donald Trump's campaign finally goes down in flames after an incredibly close election, which is yet to be called, Trump himself is refusing to accept the possibility that he might not go on to serve a second term. In fact, there was a early morning Twitter storm where the president alleged massive voter fraud in Pennsylvania. In fact, here's what he said, quote, "I easily win the president of the United States with legal votes cast. The observers were not allowed in any way, shape, or form to do their job, and therefore votes accepted during this period must be determined to be illegal votes. Supreme Court should decide." Now, look, he's hoping to kick this over to the Supreme Court, where you have Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Roberts as well, all worked on George W. Bush's campaign, or not campaign, sorry, in his legal challenge, right? That's how George W. Bush ended up winning Florida, winning the election. So that is a bit of a danger. He's definitely trying to do that. Nonetheless, he wants to toss out hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots. Ironically, of course, going back to Amy Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh, they were on the side of, we should totally count mail-in ballots because it was expected to give George W. Bush an advantage. So a little bit of hypocrisy if they do that. That said, they've counted around, my count's probably out of date now, but they counted over 600,000 votes in Philadelphia. Now, I don't know if all of those are Biden votes. I think a majority of them probably were. They probably lean heavily Biden, as Philadelphia does. But understand that Donald Trump, even if some go to him, overall, if it makes it so that he does not win Pennsylvania and therefore does not win the election, then he's not going to win. And so he wants them all gone. So now, the thing is that he's calling this voter fraud. He's like, it's evidence of fraud. We must get rid of all the illegal votes. But at the same time, is there any evidence that they are illegal votes? Is there widespread evidence of voter fraud? No. No. Like, every time they bring up a story of possible voter fraud, a bunch of holes get poked in it because they're fake. It's not real. It's not actually happening. There is no widespread voter fraud. There's even a story of a woman, I believe in Arizona, who said, I got my ballot mailed in, but I went to go vote in person. I never did a mail-in ballot. Okay, well, the state just comes out and they basically said, look, we offered her a bunch of different ways to resolve this. She declined every single one of them. We could give you a provisional ballot. No, she's caught to be a liar. And then there was a mysterious wagon full of so-called ballots that actually turned out to be camera equipment for the news crew that were there. And so all of these different conspiracies keep popping up online, and they keep getting shot down when you fact-check them. It's weird how that happens. Like, it's almost as if we look into these wild claims by conservatives when it comes to voter fraud, and every time it ends up being something that is not voter fraud. Weird. That said, this is why even Fox News is starting to shoot down the president when he talks about this, and not only as the president, but as his allies as well, in this talking point about voter fraud. In fact, take a look.
The transparency in watching the ballots is different than finding fraud that changes the direction, that narrows the gap. In Michigan, it was 146,000 votes between Biden and President Trump. So are you saying that you're going to come forward in this press conference with something that's going to change the dynamic of 147,000 ballots?
I'm saying be patient and allow us to pursue these irregularities and some of these allegations that are very serious. Very serious. And so allow that to happen. Let the process take place. It's funny that we rush to judgment. We want to get this election over with. But if there is election fraud, which everyone accuses or says there wasn't, or if there were these irregularities, we need to pursue them. And I've had so many reports come in, and some of them are very, very serious. We need to go down that avenue and make sure that every vote that was legal is counted, but also that there weren't attempts to subvert the vote of people who were voting.
We agree with you, and we want to look into everything as well, but we just haven't seen it. You know, it hasn't been presented. There's all kinds of stuff flying on the internet, but when we look into it, it doesn't pan out.
Every time we look into it, man, it just doesn't pan out. That's because there's nothing there. But notice, of course, this is Fox News, so they have to kind of toe the line. They have to walk the line because there are so many Trump voters, i.e. Fox News viewers, that are convinced that there's some sort of conspiracy going on to rob them of the vote. And it's because they can't handle the fact that they're losing, that they're not going to win this election. The thing is, I'm not actually sure that I blame them for that. Now, let me explain. For the last 4 years, there's been nonstop conservative propaganda getting beamed into people's heads from places like Fox News, Breitbart, OANN. And really, all this conservative propaganda propped them up into believing that they're the silent majority of this country. That's what this comes from. It's the silent majority, right? And we're actually, the country is massively conservative. They all agree with Donald Trump. Now, that's not true. And so, but when you believe that you are the majority of the country and that everybody thinks the same way as you, and that you think, well, there's no way that I could lose. Fox News says that everybody agrees with us and he's the best president in the world, and that the left are just a minority of angry lip cucks. Well, I mean, you're going to think that once you start losing, once the majority, the actual majority comes out and votes against you, that the whole thing must be rigged. Well, it's not. It's not. And look, in reality, COVID is the MVP of this election, okay? You've got COVID, you've got an economic recession, you have the George Floyd protests, which galvanized millions and millions of people to march for racial justice. These happened under Donald Trump. And what did Donald Trump do? Nothing. He didn't do anything about this. He actually ended up making things worse because he's a shit manager. The guy can't manage himself out of a paper bag, and much less manage the country. He can't manage his own businesses. That's why he's losing millions and millions of dollars. That's why his businesses were, even before the pandemic, hemorrhaging money. He's done absolutely nothing to prove that he has any sort of business chops. He's not a stable genius. And again, just like his business, he ran the country into the ground over the last 4 years. And so, of course, you know, most people are going to vote against that. And it's not like they loved Joe Biden, okay? It's not like there's a ton of excitement about Joe Biden. I told you before, a ham sandwich could beat Donald Trump, and Joe Biden's a little less exciting than a ham sandwich. That also could be because I'm hungry. But anyway, regardless, the fact that even Fox News now is pulling away from those conservatives. And it's funny because I showed you guys a video yesterday when Francesca was on the show where you had Trump supporters, because they had the audacity to call Arizona for Joe Biden, were chanting, Fox News sucks. Fox News sucks. And so Fox News viewers are ready to turn on Fox as well. But here's something that's also pretty interesting because, look, you've got Ronna Romney McDaniel, by the way. Just need to remind her of that little connection. She's saying, but there could be some fraud and we just need to look into it. Trying to toe that line. But there are more savvy Republicans that, like Mitch McConnell, for example, that are kind of walking away from this rhetoric. And then you also have Rupert Murdoch. So now this is according to iNews' David Parsley. Fox head Rupert Murdoch spoke to Donald Trump earlier this week and actually told him, I think you're going to lose. In fact, I think, not only do I think you're going to lose, I know you're going to lose. Privately, he writes, Mr. Murdoch, formerly friend and supporter of of the president, is dismayed by Mr. Trump's inappropriate conduct since the polls closed, claiming all this fraud, right? The 89-year-old's backing for the president has been scaled back substantially in recent months as concerns grew about Mr. Trump's erratic performance and handling of COVID-19. And so understand that that's basically a result of him making investors in Wall Street very nervous, right? And not only that, but possibly damaging down ballot Republicans, which in this case, you haven't really seen a whole lot of that, since Republicans are actually set to pick up some seats in the House over moderate Democrats, and that's an entirely different discussion. And there's the possibility that a few seats might be picked up in the Senate. And so, thankfully for them, they didn't have to really worry about that. It sucks for us because, we're not going to be able to get anything done without a Democratic House and Senate, which we have the House. But it's very likely that Mitch McConnell will stay majority leader. And so that's that really sucks when it comes to progressive policy. That said, this Wednesday, Murdoch also called Mitch McConnell and asked him and his GOP colleagues not to bolster Trump's conspiracy theories about election fraud. McConnell apparently agreed, as evidenced by his Thursday morning comments where he said, "Claiming you've won the election is different from finishing the counting," which of course is what we all want to do. We want to make sure that the counting is done, no matter how it shakes out. Although it is going to shake out to Biden, we still want that counting done. Republicans have shown that they don't want to finish the counting if that means Joe Biden is going to win. Other senior Republicans also, according to Parsley, began to publicly question Mr. Trump's behavior in the aftermath of the vote. Such phone calls from Mr. Murdoch and his team may help to explain why the president has struggled to find many prominent Republicans to publicly endorse his wild claims, alongside the lack of any evidence of fraud, of course. There is no voter fraud. There is no insane, conspiracy with people, finding, quote-unquote, finding ballots in the middle of nowhere that just happened to be marked for Biden, or throwing away ballots that were meant for Donald Trump. That's just not the reality. And apparently Ronna McDaniel did not get the memo and seems to be happy with going down with the ship. Sad. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.